Hello and welcome to all. English boxing, also known as the noble art, is the most publicized and most watched fighting sport of all time, largely due to its matches, the outcome of which is always unlikely, but also thanks to the legendary boxers who have established their letters of nobility in this sport. Thus, among the procession of famous boxers who have left their mark on memories, we find of course names like George Foreman, Joe Frazier, Jake LaMotta, or the unstoppable and very aggressive Mike Tyson, whose fights have mostly remained in the anthology. These great fighters certainly brought boxing to heights never reached before, however. None of them will have marked the history of boxing anymore, as did a certain Cassius Clay, better known under the name of Muhammad Ali. He had an aura and charisma like no other and was also considered one of the greatest boxing artists of all time. Muhammad Ali was one of the leading heavyweight boxers of the 20th century, and he is the first three-time heavyweight champion in this division. For many, the extraordinary Muhammad Ali remains the best boxer in history, and no boxer could ever surpass or even equal him. So, make yourself comfortable, because today we are going to find out why Muhammad Ali was so extraordinary. Let's get started. Muhammad Ali was born on January 17, 1942, in Louisville, Kentucky, and was named after his father, Cassius Marcellus Clay, in honor of the 19th-century Republican politician and convinced abolitionist Cassius Marcellus Clay, who was also from the state of Kentucky. Little Cassius Jr. grew up in a large family with his 5 siblings, in more than modest circumstances, during the racial segregation that raged in the post-war United States. Social tension against African Americans was at its height, with his mother even remembering an occasion when he was refused a glass of water in a store simply because they were people of color. It was one of the many racist episodes that African Americans at the time had to endure, but one that had deeply affected little Cassius Jr. It was thus in this deleterious atmosphere, punctuated by extreme racism towards blacks, that Cassius decided to fight against the injustices of which black Americans were victims, but also against all those who wanted to harm him personally. The idea of taking up boxing was inspired by the Louisville police officer and boxing coach Joe E. Cassius was a man who was a member of the Louisville Police Department and a boxing coach. Martin, who had met the then 12-year-old boy, threatening another boy for stealing his bicycle. Clay told the officer that he was going to kick the thief's ass, but the officer was amused by the boy's fury and told him that he had to learn how to box first, and offered to take him under his wing and train him. Initially, the young teenager did not accept Joe Martin's offer, but a few weeks later, Clay became interested in the prospect of fighting and began dreaming of becoming a champion. He decided to put his fantasies into action and enrolled in a local boxing school under the guidance of Coach Fred Stoner, whom he credits with giving him the real training, ultimately shaping his style, stamina, and system. Cassius Clay made his amateur boxing debut in 1954 against local amateur boxer Ronnie O'Keefe, a first match he won by a split decision. The young boxer went on to win 6 Kentucky Golden Gloves titles while adding 2 National Golden Gloves titles, an American Athletic Union national title, and a light heavyweight gold medal at the 1960 Summer Olympics in Rome to his prestigious record. At the end of his brilliant amateur career, Cassius Clay's record was 100 wins and only 5 defeats, but all these accomplishments did not satisfy the young man. As for him, the tastiest victory had to be his fight against the racism and segregation raging in America. An anecdote that would later be recounted in the boxer's autobiography informs us that shortly after returning from the Olympic Games in Rome, he threw his gold medal into the Ohio River after he and a friend were refused service at a whites-only restaurant. A gesture that meant everything, for what an athlete would throw away a hard-earned Olympic medal, and a gold one at that? The rebellious and spirited young boxer will start his professional career with a victory over Tony Hunsaker, then the 19-year-old gold medalist will go on to win a few more, and will even make an exhibition against former world champion Ingemar Johansson, who was preparing his 3rd fight against Floyd Patterson. The young Cassius then returned to his stronghold in Louisville and continued to defeat all his opponents, building a reputation for invulnerability that would spread throughout America. On November 15, 1962, he scored a thundering success against Archie Moore in 4 rounds. The most surprising thing is that he had predicted before the fight that he would stop his opponent on the 4th round. Named Boxer of the Year in 1963, Clay naturally became the best candidate for the title of world champion, held at the time by the terrible Sonny Liston. But despite his 19 victories, 15 of which were knockouts, and no defeats, the Louisville boxer was not considered an opponent capable of defeating Liston, who was then considered invincible. On February 25, 1964, in Miami, the fight between them must have been a mere formality for Liston, who had even declared that he might end up in jail after the match because he would probably have killed Clay. Liston was an intimidating personality, a dominant fighter who was 6 feet tall and weighed 99 pounds, and virtually every prediction was on his side, making Clay an outsider by 7-1. As soon as the opening bell rings, Liston will go on a rampage against Clay, like a hurricane of fury, visibly looking for the knockout. But this was without counting on the speed and superior mobility of young Clay, who managed to dodge all of his opponent's attacks, exhausting him and forcing him to hit several times in the air, which resulted in a shoulder injury. After 6 rounds that saw Liston badly mauled, the exhausted and shoulder-injured defending champion gave up on the call of the 7th round, leaving young Clay to parade around the ring mocking the journalists. The young boxer prodigy had thus told them to go and eat their words, about the articles they had written about him predicting his defeat. By winning that fight at the age of 22, Clay had become the youngest boxer to win the title of reigning heavyweight champion, and his fame was international. It was at this very moment, knowing that he was grabbing the attention of the world's press, that he joined the Nation of Islam and changed his name to Cassius X. The letter X refers to the rejection of his name as a slave in the absence of his real name of African origin, a common practice within this organization, as Malcolm X did. Freshly converted to Islam, it was Elijah Muhammad, leader of the movement himself, who gave him his new name of Muslim, and from that moment on, Cassius became Muhammad Ali. The notoriety of the boxer will benefit the Nation of Islam and especially the cause of Black Americans. However, after the assassination of his friend and mentor, the great Malcolm X in 1965, Ali was deeply grieved and regretted terribly turning his back on him for a while, when a power struggle had started between Elijah and Malcolm. Parallel to his career as an activist, Muhammad Ali ruled unchallenged in the rings, becoming almost invincible, and while traditionally the champion fights twice a year, Ali fought 5 times in 1966, with nothing but victories and no defeats. That same year, the boxer refused to serve in the U.S. Army, engaged in the Vietnam War, and became a conscientious objector, arguing that he had nothing against Vietnam and that no Vietnamese had ever called him a dirty Negro. For bravely defying the public authority that was inciting the war, he was fined $10,000 and sentenced to 5 years in prison. He also lost his boxing license and his title. Ali appealed and avoided prison, but it was not until 1971 that he was acquitted and regained the right to box again. His goal now, to regain his title of world champion, then held by his friend and future great rival, Joe Frazier. He provoked him publicly, insulting him several times on American television. Yet Frazier helped Ali financially during his years out of the rings. Muhammad Ali suffered his first defeat in this fight, winning on points by his opponent on March 8, 1971. He has to fight it out again to retake the title, this time from George Foreman. Big George, as he is known, is a clear favorite because he is undefeated and very powerful. And this is where Muhammad Ali once again makes history. A new boxing promoter, Don King, organizes the meeting between the 2 opponents in the current Tata Raphael Stadium in Kinshasa, Zaire, now the Democratic Republic of Congo. 2 Americans fighting in Africa. It has never happened before. And moreover, the sums at stake are colossal. Don King, who will then impose himself as the most important boxing promoter of the end of the 20th century, offers to the champion and the challenger $5 million each, a record sum at the time, that he obtained from the dictator Mobutu Sese Seko, who wishes, by this fight, to promote his country. The press is giving Ali a little bit of chance to take on the younger, stronger Foreman. But studying Foreman's style carefully, he finds his weak point, lack of stamina. The champion has won most of his fights in the first few rounds. Ali understands that he has to hold on and make the fight last. Ali runs through the capital and along the Congo River to build up his stamina to the cheers of the crowd, while Foreman is content to train by punching the bag and martyring his training partners. Ali trains to take violent blows with his friend Larry Holmes and launches a disinformation operation against Foreman by making everyone believe that he was going to win by his speed and mobility. Ali quickly becomes the favorite of the Kinshasa crowd for his action towards the black cause, which will offend Foreman. Nicknamed the Rumble in the Jungle, the fight took place on October 30, 1974. Ali, whose best shot was the jab and whose main asset was mobility, remained the major part of the fight in the ropes and surprised Foreman by sending him, in the first rounds, more right-handed jabs than left-handed jabs. The high guard, painfully absorbing the champion's violent blows and bouncing against the strings, Ali resists, retaliates with many sequences, which exhaust and mark Foreman, who is not used to fighting so long. With his face swollen by Ali's blows, he falls in the 8th round after taking yet another series of blows. Counting down, he gets up a second too late. Ali regained his title 10 years after his first fight against Liston. It was his greatest tactical victory, which was awarded as the Fight of the Year, and Ali was once again named Boxer of the Year. A year later, he reached his sporting peak in Manila, Philippines, again against Joe Frazier, whom he defeated in a fight fought under 40 degrees Celsius. In 1984, 3 years after his last fight, and at the age of only 42, he was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. Thereafter, his motor functions began to slowly decline. After being hospitalized twice, late 2014 and early 2015, for pneumonia and a urinary tract infection, Ali was admitted to hospital on June 2, 2016, for respiratory problems. He died the next day, in the evening, at the age of 74, after having fought for 32 years against Parkinson's disease. So, what do you think of the incredible destiny of the great Muhammad Ali? Give us your thoughts in the comments.